Story 1. The Night Shift at Riverside Mall. I worked as a security guard at Riverside Mall for about 8 months. It was a decent gig, quiet most of the time. I'd patrol the empty stores, check the doors, watch the cameras. Easy money. This happened back in March. I was working the overnight shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. The mall closed at 9, so by the time I started my rounds, the place was completely empty. Just me and the hum of the HVAC system. Around 1:30 in the morning, I was sitting in the security office reviewing camera feeds. That's when I noticed something on monitor 4. It showed the food court area. There was someone standing near the Sparrow's entrance, just standing there, completely still. I thought maybe it was a homeless person who'd hidden before closing. It happens sometimes. I grabbed my flashlight and radio and headed down there. The walk from the office to the food court is about 3 minutes through the main corridor. The lights were on that automatic dimmer mode, so everything had this weird gray tone to it. When I got to the food court, nobody was there. I checked behind the counters, looked in the bathrooms nearby. Nothing. I figured maybe they'd moved when they heard me coming. I went back to the office. The person was on the camera again. Same spot, same position. Arms at their sides, facing the camera directly. This time I noticed something I'd missed before. They were wearing what looked like a dark hoodie and jeans, but their face was completely obscured by the hood. Like, unnaturally dark. I couldn't make out any features at all. I radioed my supervisor, Tony. He worked the downtown office building on the same nights. "Hey Tony, I got someone in the mall. They're not responding. Might need to call the cops." "You sure it's not a mannequin?" he asked. I looked closer at the monitor. "It's not a mannequin. I can see it moving. Just barely. Like breathing." "All right, I'll call it in. Stay in the office until they arrive." I should have listened to him, but I had this weird feeling, like I needed to see who this person was, why they were just standing there. I left the office again. This time I approached from the south entrance, trying to come up behind where they were standing. I moved quietly, keeping my flashlight off until the last second. When I turned the corner into the food court, they were gone again. But this time, I heard something. Footsteps. Fast ones. Running away from me toward the west corridor where the anchor stores were. I ran after them. "Security! Stop right there!" The footsteps echoed through the empty mall. I could hear them, but I couldn't see anyone. The corridor stretched out ahead of me, completely empty. The footsteps stopped. I stopped too. I was standing in front of the old Macy's. It had closed down 6 months earlier, and was just an empty shell now. The gate was down and locked. Nobody could have gotten in there. But I heard something from inside. A scraping sound. Like something heavy being dragged across the floor. "This isn't funny," I called out. My voice sounded weak. I hated how scared I sounded. The scraping stopped. Then I heard it. A voice. It was coming from inside the Macy's, behind that locked gate. "Help me." It was a woman's voice. Quiet. Desperate. "Who's in there?" I asked. I pulled out my keys, looking for the one to the gate. "Please," the voice said. "He's coming back." My hands were shaking. I found the key and started to unlock the gate. That's when I heard the footsteps again. Behind me this time. Close. I spun around. There was a man standing about 10 feet away. He was wearing normal clothes. Jeans, a jacket. His face looked completely normal. He could have been anyone, but his eyes were wrong. They were too wide, too focused. "You shouldn't open that," he said calmly. "Who are you?" I backed up against the gate. He took a step forward. "I work here." "No, you don't." "I know everyone who works here." He smiled. It wasn't a normal smile. "I used to work here. Long time ago. Before they closed the Macy's." I reached for my radio. He moved faster than I expected. His hand shot out and grabbed my wrist. His grip was ice cold. "There's nobody in there," he whispered. "There's never been anybody in there." He let go and walked past me, heading toward the exit. I stood there, frozen, watching him disappear into the shadows near the main entrance. I radioed Tony again, my voice shaking. "The cops need to get here now." They arrived about 5 minutes later. We searched the entire mall. Found nothing. No signs of forced entry. No homeless people. No mysterious man in a jacket. But when we checked the Macy's, we found something. Scratches on the inside of the gate. Fresh ones. Like someone had been trying to claw their way out. I quit 2 weeks later. Tony told me I was overreacting, that it was probably just kids playing a prank, but I know what I heard. I know what I saw, and sometimes, late at night, I still think about that voice behind the gate. The way she said, "He's coming back," like she knew something I didn't. I wonder if she's still in there. I wonder if anyone ever let her out. Story 2. The Warehouse on Potter Street. I used to work security at a distribution warehouse in industrial South Jersey. The place was massive, about 200,000 square feet of storage space, loading docks, offices. During the day, it was busy with trucks and workers. At night, it was just me. The pay was good, $18 an hour to basically walk around and make sure nothing caught fire. I'd been doing it for almost a year when this happened. It was a Tuesday night in October. Cold. The kind of cold that gets into your bones. I started my shift at midnight like always. The day crew had already cleared out. I did my first perimeter check, made sure all the loading dock doors were secure, checked the offices upstairs. Everything was normal until around 2 a.m. I was doing a walkthrough of the main storage area. Rows and rows of metal shelving units, stacked 20 feet high with boxes and pallets. The fluorescent lights flickered occasionally, but that was normal. Old building, old wiring. That's when I heard it. A voice. Distant. Like someone calling out. I stopped walking. Hello? Nothing. Just the hum of the lights and the distant sound of traffic on the highway. I kept walking. Maybe I'd imagined it, but then I heard it again. Clearer this time. Help. It was coming from the back of the warehouse, the oldest section, where they stored damaged goods before disposal. I grabbed my flashlight and headed that way. "Who's there?" I called out. "This is security." No response. I reached the back section and swept my flashlight across the shelves. Boxes everywhere. Old inventory. Some of it had been sitting there for years. Then I saw something that made my stomach drop. One of the emergency exit doors was propped open. Just slightly. Maybe 6 inches. Cold air was seeping in. I approached it slowly. "If someone's in here, you need to identify yourself right now." I pushed the door open wider and looked outside. The parking lot was empty. Just my car, sitting under the streetlight about 50 yards away. I pulled the door shut and made sure it latched properly. Probably just didn't close all the way when the last person used it. But that didn't explain the voice. I radioed the main office. "Hey, dispatch. Can you check the sign-in log? Did anyone come in after the day shift?" The dispatcher, Sarah, came back a minute later. "Negative. You're the only one signed in since 11:45. Copy that." I continued my rounds, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The warehouse felt different, like the air pressure had changed, like I was being watched. Around 3:30, I went up to the second floor offices to do my checkup there. The management offices, the break room, the bathrooms, all empty like usual. I was walking down the hallway when I noticed something. One of the office doors was open. I knew I'd closed it during my first round. I always closed all the doors. I approached it carefully. The nameplate next to the door said, "Operations Manager." I'd met the guy once. Nice enough. Didn't come in much at night. I pushed the door open wider. The office was dark, except for the glow from the parking lot. Lights coming through the window. The desk was neat. Computer off. Everything normal. Except for the chair. It was turned toward the door, like someone had been sitting in it, watching the hallway. I stepped inside and checked behind the door, under the desk. Nobody there. I turned to leave, and that's when I saw it. On the computer monitor, which I thought was off, there was a reflection. Not mine. Someone standing behind me. I spun around. Nobody there. My heart was pounding. I looked back at the monitor. The reflection was gone. I got out of that office fast. I went back downstairs to the main floor, thinking maybe I should just stay in the security office for the rest of the shift. But I had a job to do. I couldn't just hide. I was walking through the center aisle of the storage area when I heard footsteps. Not my footsteps. Someone else's. They were moving parallel to me. One aisle over. I stopped. The footsteps stopped. I started walking again. The footsteps matched my pace. "I know you're there," I said loudly. "Come out right now, or I'm calling the police." The footsteps stopped. Then I heard something that made my skin crawl. Laughter. Quiet, but definitely laughter. I turned down the aisle where the sound was coming from. It was empty, but at the far end, I saw something move. A shadow, crossing from one aisle to another. I ran toward it. I don't know why. Maybe I was angry. Maybe I was just tired of being scared, but I ran. When I got to where I'd seen the shadow, there was nothing. Just empty space between the shelving units. But then I noticed something on the ground. Footprints. Wet footprints. Like someone had stepped in water and tracked it across the concrete floor. The footprints led toward the back of the warehouse, toward that same emergency exit I'd found propped open earlier. I followed them. They ended right at the door, and the door was open again. Wide open this time. I looked outside. The parking lot was still empty, but the footprints continued. Wet prints on the asphalt, leading away from the building toward the perimeter fence, and then they just stopped, in the middle of the parking lot, like whoever made them had just vanished. I called the police. They came out, searched the whole building, found nothing. They said maybe it was a prank. Maybe someone from the day shift was messing with me, but I knew better. The day shift didn't leave wet footprints, and they definitely didn't laugh like that. I finished out my shift that night, but I put in my 2 weeks notice the next day. My supervisor tried to convince me to stay, said I was overreacting, but I told him the truth. There's something in that warehouse, and I'm not sticking around to find out what it wants. I heard they hired someone to replace me, a guy named Marcus. He lasted 3 nights before he quit too. Said he kept hearing voices, said he felt like he was being followed. They've had trouble keeping security guards there ever since. The turnover rate is insane, but the company won't acknowledge there's a problem. They just keep hiring new people and acting like it's normal when they quit after a few weeks. I drive past that warehouse sometimes on my way to my new job. The lights are always on, and sometimes, late at night, I swear I can see a figure standing in one of the windows on the 2nd floor. Just standing there, watching the parking lot, watching, and waiting for the next person to work the night shift alone. Story 3. The office building on 7th Avenue. I worked security at a 12-story office building in downtown Portland. Nothing fancy, just insurance companies, law firms, accounting offices. The kind of place where everyone leaves by 6 p.m. and nobody comes back until morning. My shift was 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Most nights I'd sit at the lobby desk, watch the cameras, do a couple of rounds per shift. Easy work. Boring, but easy. This happened last February. I'd been working there about 4 months. It was a Thursday night. Raining hard. The kind of rain that sounds like static on the windows. Around midnight, I was doing my first full building check. I started on the ground floor and worked my way up, checking each floor systematically. Every floor had the same layout. Elevator lobby in the center. Offices branching off in a square around it. Floors 1 through 6 were fine. Nothing out of place. When I got to the 7th floor, something felt different. The elevator doors opened, and I immediately noticed the temperature. It was cold. Way colder than the other floors. I could see my breath. Great, I muttered. HVAC's broken again. I stepped out and started my check. The 7th floor was mostly occupied by a marketing firm called Brennan & Associates. I'd met some of their employees during the day. They seemed normal enough. I was walking past one of the conference rooms when I heard it. Typing. Someone was typing on a keyboard. Fast typing. The kind you hear in a busy office during the day. I stopped and listened. It was definitely coming from inside one of the offices. I checked my watch. 12:17 a.m. I knocked on the door. Security. Is someone working late? The typing stopped immediately. No response. I tried the handle. Locked. I used my master key and opened the door slowly. The office was empty. Desk, computer, filing cabinets, everything in its place. But the computer was off. Not in sleep mode. Completely off. I stood there for a moment, listening. Nothing. Just the sound of rain against the windows. I closed the door and continued my rounds. Maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe it was the building settling or something. But then I heard it again. From a different office this time. typing. Same fast rhythm, same intensity. I walked toward the sound. It was coming from an office at the end of the hall. The nameplate on the door said, "Rachel Brennan, partner." I knocked. "Security. I need you to identify yourself." The typing continued, like whoever was in there couldn't hear me or didn't care. I unlocked the door and pushed it open. Empty. Computer off. But there was something on the desk that wasn't there before. A coffee mug. Still steaming. I picked it up. It was warm. Fresh coffee. But there was no coffee maker on this floor. The break room was on the 3rd floor. I set the mug down and backed out of the office. Something was very wrong. I radioed down to the lobby desk. Wait, no. I was alone. There was no one at the lobby desk. It was just me, in the building. I pulled out my cell phone and called my supervisor, Dave. He picked up on the 3rd ring. "This better be good," he said. He sounded half asleep. "Dave, I've got a situation. 7th floor. I'm hearing typing. Found fresh coffee, but there's nobody here." There was a pause. "You checked the sign-in log?" "Yeah, nobody signed in. I'm the only one in the building." Another pause. "Look, just finish your rounds and get back to the lobby. If you see someone, call the cops. Otherwise, it's probably just your mind playing tricks." "Dave, there's hot coffee on a desk." "Then someone from the day shift left it. I don't know what to tell you. Just finish your rounds." He hung up. I was on my own. I decided to check the rest of the floor quickly and get out of there. I moved faster now, just glancing into each office through the door windows instead of going inside. That's when I saw her. In one of the offices near the end of the hall, a woman sitting at a desk. She was wearing business clothes. Her back was to the door. She was typing. I froze. How did I miss her? I checked every office. I knocked on the window. "Excuse me, ma'am. The building is closed." She didn't turn around. Just kept typing. I knocked harder. "Ma'am, I need you to acknowledge me." Still nothing. Her hands moved across the keyboard in that same fast rhythm I'd been hearing all night. I used my key and opened the door. "Ma'am, I'm security. You need to." The chair was empty. Nobody there. But the keyboard was still making noise. The keys were pressing themselves down, typing on their own. I watched in horror as words appeared on the screen. A document was being written. Fast. Line after line of text filling the screen. I stepped closer and read what was being typed. "Get out, get out, get out, get out, get out." Over and over. Hundreds of lines. The same 2 words repeating. I backed out of the office and ran. I didn't care about checking the rest of the floors. I didn't care about protocol. I just ran to the elevator and hit the button. The elevator took forever to arrive. I kept looking back down the hallway, expecting to see someone coming after me, but the hallway was empty. Finally, the elevator dinged and the doors opened. I got in and pressed the lobby button. As the doors started to close, I saw something that made my heart stop. Every office door on the 7th floor was open now, wide open, and in each doorway stood a figure. Dark silhouettes, all of them facing the elevator, all of them perfectly still. The doors closed before I could see more. I rode down to the lobby in silence. When the doors opened, I ran straight to the front desk, grabbed my jacket and keys, and headed for the exit. That's when I heard it. The elevator behind me. It was coming back down. I could hear the mechanism moving, floor by floor. 12, 11, 10, 9. I didn't wait to see what was in it. I ran out into the rain and didn't stop until I reached my car. I called Dave from the parking lot and told him I was going home. Told him I quit. He tried to argue with me, but I hung up. The next morning, I got a call from the building manager. She said they'd reviewed the security footage from last night. She said I was on camera entering the 7th floor at 12:15 a.m. and leaving at 12:43 a.m. But here's the thing. She said the cameras showed me standing in that hallway for almost 30 minutes. Just standing there, staring at the wall. She said I never went into any offices, never used my keys, just stood there in the middle of the hallway, not moving, like I was in a trance. I told her she was wrong. I told her what really happened, but she didn't believe me. They hired a new guard the next week. I heard he lasted 2 shifts before he quit. Said the 7th floor gave him the creeps. Said he kept hearing typing when nobody was there. I don't work security anymore. I got a job at a warehouse during the day. Normal hours, normal people around me. But sometimes at night, I wake up and I can hear it. That fast typing, that same rhythm. And I remember those figures standing in the doorways. All of them watching, all of them waiting. And I wonder what would have happened if I'd stayed. If I'd waited for that elevator to reach the lobby. I'm glad I never found out. Story 4. The construction site on Hammond Road. I worked security at a construction site for about 6 months. It was a new apartment complex being built on the east side of town. 8 buildings planned, but when I was there, only 3 were partially finished. Concrete shells mostly. No windows, no doors, just bare structures. The job was simple. Show up at 8 p.m., patrol the site every hour, make sure no one was stealing equipment or copper wire. The construction crew had problems with theft before I was hired, so they wanted someone there overnight. I didn't mind it. The pay was decent, and most nights were quiet. I'd sit in my car between rounds, listen to podcasts, watch Netflix on my phone. Easy money. This happened in late September. The weather was starting to turn cold. Leaves were falling. That time of year when it gets dark early and stays dark late. I showed up for my shift like normal. The site foreman, Jack, was just finishing up for the day. He waved as he drove past me toward the exit. "Anything I should know about?" I called out. He rolled down his window. "Nah, all quiet today. Oh, but stay out of Building C. We had some structural issues. Waiting on the inspector to clear it. Got it." He drove off and I was alone. The site was big. Maybe 5 acres of cleared land with the 3 buildings spread out across it. Construction equipment parked in rows. Stacks of materials covered with tarps. Chain link fence around the whole perimeter. I did my first patrol around 9:30. Walked the fence line. Checked the equipment. Made sure all the locks were secure. Everything looked normal. Building A and B were fine. Just concrete and rebar. Nothing creepy about them. But Building C was different. It was the furthest from the entrance, tucked back near the tree line. Something about it felt off. Maybe it was because Jack had told me to stay out. Maybe it was something else. I stood outside looking up at it. 4 stories tall, dark windows like empty eye sockets. The ground floor entrance was blocked with caution tape and a wooden barricade. I made a note in my log and moved on. Around 11 p.m., I was sitting in my car when I heard something. A crash, like metal falling. It came from the direction of Building C. I grabbed my flashlight and radio and headed that way. The site was dark, except for a few work lights on poles scattered around. They created these long shadows that made everything look distorted. When I got to Building C, I didn't see anything out of place. No fallen equipment, no signs of anyone being there. But then I heard it again. The crash. It was coming from inside the building. I knew I wasn't supposed to go in. Jack had been clear about that. But what if someone was in there? What if they got hurt? I pulled aside the barricade and ducked under the caution tape. The entrance led into what would eventually be the lobby. Concrete floor, exposed ceiling, temporary work lights strung up but not turned on. I clicked on my flashlight and swept it around. "Security! If someone's in here, you need to come out now." My voice echoed through the empty space. No response. I moved deeper into the building. There was a stairwell in the center leading up to the higher floors. That's where the sound had come from. Upstairs. I started climbing. The stairs were rough concrete. No railings yet. Each step echoed. When I reached the 2nd floor, I stopped. The hallway stretched out in both directions. Future apartments on either side. Just empty concrete rooms with no walls between them yet. I heard footsteps. Someone was walking above me. 3rd floor. "Hey!" I shouted. "This is private property. Come down here right now." The footsteps stopped. Then I heard something that made my blood run cold. A voice. Singing. It was a woman's voice. She was singing something I didn't recognize. Not words exactly. More like humming. A melody that sounded old. Sad. I climbed to the 3rd floor. The singing was louder now. It was coming from the far end of the hallway. I walked toward it, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The singing continued. That same haunting melody, over and over. I reached the end of the hallway. There was a room there, slightly larger than the others. Maybe a corner unit. The singing was coming from inside. I stepped through the doorway and swept my flashlight across the space. Empty. Completely empty. But the singing continued. It was all around me now, like it was coming from the walls themselves. Then it stopped. Just cut off mid-note. The silence that followed was somehow worse than the singing. I backed toward the doorway. That's when I noticed something on the floor. Footprints. Concrete dust footprints. Small ones. Like a woman's shoes. They led from where I was standing toward the window opening on the far wall. I followed them with my flashlight. They went right up to the window and stopped. Just stopped at the edge, where someone would step out into nothing. 4 stories up. I approached the window carefully and looked down. The ground below was hard-packed, dirt and gravel. No way anyone could jump from here and walk away. But there, in the dirt below, I saw more footprints. The same small shoes. They led away from the building toward the tree line. I got out of there fast. Didn't bother checking the rest of the building. I went straight back to my car and called Jack. Jack, we've got a problem. Someone was in Building C. I heard them. Saw footprints. He sounded annoyed. I told you to stay out of there. It's not safe. Jack. Someone was singing. A woman. She was on the 3rd floor. There was a long pause. What did it sound like? The singing. I don't know. Old. Sad. Why? Another pause. Listen. I need you to do something for me. Go back to Building C. Go to the ground floor. Look for a piece of plywood near the back left corner. Tell me if it's been moved. Why? What's under there? Just do it. Please. I didn't want to go back to that building. But something in Jack's voice told me this was important. I walked back to Building C and went to the back left corner like he said. There was a piece of plywood on the ground. It looked like it had been there a while. I moved it aside. Underneath was a hole, like a small foundation pit that hadn't been filled in yet. My flashlight beam caught something at the bottom. Flowers. Fresh flowers. Someone had placed them down there recently. Jack, I said into the phone. There's flowers here. What is this? He was quiet for a moment. We found something when we were excavating that area. Last month. Before you started working here. We had to stop construction and call the authorities. My stomach dropped. What did you find? We're not supposed to talk about it. Legal reasons. But let's just say there was something buried there. Something that had been there a long time. The police took it away. Ran tests. Whole thing held up construction for 2 weeks. Why didn't anyone tell me? Because we thought it was over. We thought, once they removed what was there, everything would go back to normal. Has anyone else reported strange things before me? You're the 4th guard we've hired. The other 3 quit within a week. Wouldn't say why. Just quit. I looked up at Building C. All those dark windows staring down at me. I'm not staying here tonight, I said. I understand. I'll come out tomorrow and we can talk about... I hung up. I grabbed my stuff from the car and left. Didn't even clock out properly. Just drove away and never went back. Jack called me a few times over the next week. I didn't answer. Eventually, he stopped calling. I heard later that they shut down construction on Building C entirely. Something about the ground being unstable. They're building around it now, leaving that whole section empty. But I know the real reason. It's not the ground that's unstable. It's whatever's still there. Whatever was buried all those years ago. Whatever's still singing in the empty spaces between the concrete and rebar. I work at a hospital now. Daytime security. Lots of people around. Bright lights. I don't do night shifts anymore. Don't do construction sites. Don't do anywhere that's empty and dark. Because I learned something that night. Some places remember what happened to them. Some places hold on to things long after they should have let go. And some places aren't empty, even when there's nobody there. Well, those were tonight's stories. If you enjoyed them, make sure to subscribe, leave a like, and let me know in the comments which one got to you the most. I'll see you soon with more stories.